Ladies and gentlemen, the show will begin in just 3 minutes' time. I repeat, the show will begin in just 3 minutes' time.
Welcome to the chase, where the sense of thrill. Ben and John are here and take time stand still. Diving deep where others just pretend. They get guides on this journey, chasing descent. Chasing descent, when truth's the quest. Ben and John won't give it a rest. In a maze of facts, they find a way, bringing the dawn of a clearer day. They laugh, they grow, they take no signs through rabbit holes. They take their strides when we're after their heaven sent. Ben and John chasing descent. So hit subscribe, don't be content. Join the chase, the omnipresent. With Ben and John, no time is misspent. On the trail with chasing descent. So hit subscribe, don't be content. Join the chase, be omnipresent. With Ben and John, no time is misspent. On the trail with chasing descent. They laugh, they grow, they choose the quest. Ben and John, where choose the quest. They laugh, they grow, they take no signs through rabbit holes. They take their stride. They laugh, they grow, they take no signs through rabbit holes. They take their strides. When advance to the heaven sent. Ben and John chasing descent. So hit subscribe, don't be content. Join the chase, be omnipresent. With Ben and John, no time is misspent. On the trail with chasing descent. Descent. So hit subscribe, don't be content. Join the chase, be omnipresent. With Ben and John, no time is misspent. On the trail with chasing descent.
Should have unmuted my mic earlier. Yes, Shalini, Adam created this song. I believe I'm running on about a 20-second delay right now. Don't know why. There just seems to be a weird piece of latency going on. But good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. We are here once again to watch some politicians waffle on. Now, a lot of you that will be watching this, either live or watching it back, might actually want to hear what these politicians have to say, and therefore, I thought we'd come on board, and we'd watch along with Reform UK's Manifesto launch. The video itself, or at least the event, is called Live Reform Launches Our Contract with You from the Labour Heartlands. That's Reform launching their contract with the people. Now, as we all know, Reform UK are not going to win this election. Let's just call it as we see it and say it as it is. They're not going to win this election. This is Labour's election to lose on July the 4th, ironically, Americans' Independence Day, when we're going to fall to communists. But Labour are going to win this election, and I think Reform have made that extremely clear in their campaigning. They're saying this isn't about us winning this election, but about 2029 us taking power then. This is a 5-year campaign, and then the 2029 campaigning begins on July the 5th, 2024. Do we think a Labour government makes it all the way to 2029? I'm not so sure myself, but we shall see. So this will be Nigel Farage and Richard Tice in about just over 5 minutes' time, launching their manifesto from what they're saying is the Labour heartland. So we will see what they have to say. But I'm going to make some predictions. First and foremost, they're going to say that thanks to that one YouGov poll, they are now the official opposition. They're going to say that. That's going to be a buzzword. That's going to be a talking point. They're going to say this is the immigration election, or at least they're going to try and make it the immigration election, because that has been what they've been trying to do since Nigel Farage rejoined, or at least retook, Reform UK from Richard Tice. They're going to use buzz phrases like population explosion. Now, before anybody thinks I'm knocking them for doing these things, I'm just making predictions first and foremost. But secondly, they're going to speak to people like they're regular people. They're going to speak in this manifesto launch, and probably within the manifesto itself, as if they're talking to the working classes, regular people. And their fingers are probably very much more on the pulse of what the working classes, normal people, want to see this election bring than Labour, the Conservatives, the Liberal Democrats, any of those. So we're here. We will obviously provide commentary because we have to. But we will see what Nigel Farage and Richard Tice have to say today. I want to welcome our live viewers. I'll say hello to Shalini, to Julie, to Beats and Tapes. A bunch of people there watching live. If you are watching live, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you are not subscribed. We've been doing these election streams constantly since the campaign began. We streamed the debate. We streamed Farage launching in Clacton. John streamed Farage making his announcement speech that he was returning to the fold. That, I mean, nobody saw that coming. But we shall see what they have to say. Shalini says, Julian Beats, David Curtin's Heritage Party are standing in a few seats, I think 6 in Wales, if you want to take a look. Let me just be completely honest with you. The first past the post system ensures that people like, or parties like the Heritage Party, can never get seats in Parliament. They may get one in like a tiny constituency, but they're going to say to you, and this is another buzzword or buzz phrase I believe Farage or Tice will use during this announcement. They're going to say a vote for the Conservatives is a vote for Labour, because it has been up until that one YouGov poll came out saying that Reform UK are ahead of the Conservatives. It has been a fact that a vote for Reform is pretty much a vote for Labour, and people get angry when you say that, but unfortunately we have an electoral system that makes that the reality. We've got first past the post. There's no proportional representation, so that is the situation in which we stand. I think they're probably going to announce some kind of push for proportional representation in this manifesto launch, and they did allude the other day to putting big issues, big countrywide issues that affect us all to the country as a referendum, which John says is his idea that Farage and Reform have stolen. I'm just going to make sure that when we do switch over to the press conference, you'll be able to hear them. And yes, you are able to hear them. That much I can say. We're in a real quandary in this country, where it has been the status quo that only Labour or the Conservatives can take power. Because of that election system, that first past the post system, there are things like safe seats, and there should never be a safe seat for any party. Because, let's face it, politicians have lost their way. They have lost their sense of purpose, because their purpose is to represent yours, eyes, and everybody else's interests, both in a countrywide manner via Parliament and on the world stage. They are supposed to be doing things in order to make our lives easier, make our lives better, and most importantly, make our lives safer. And they haven't been doing that for a long, long, long time because they're comfortable. They're extremely comfortable in their positions. Okay, I think Reform UK have made their stream live. So we're going to flick over so that we can see it. There it is. I'm going to make it full screen. There you go. We'll make it live. So when they come on board, we shall know. Vaughn's here too. Well, good afternoon, Vaughan. And like I said, like the stream, if you could, please. We would appreciate that. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And, of course, you may do anything further, such as becoming a channel member if you really think we're doing a good job. But we're here. We're live. And we're going to see what Nigel Farage, Richard Tice, and Reform UK have to say in their manifesto in, I would say, just under 1 minute's time, if they're actually running on time. So, how are we all? Here we go. You would have thought they would have already been on stage by now, but apparently not. But Britain, wow, that is quite a dingy hall they're in. I mean, look at these. Look at this. Up here. Reform UK launches our contract review, also known as our manifesto. That photographer in the middle of the screen there looks like he's seen some stuff, man. I've seen some things and some stuff. Well, it's good to see, as a disabled man, it's good to see some disabled representation right there, front and centre. Okay, are we ready? You say 1 PM? It is 1 PM. Hit the like button, share this out if you can. We'd appreciate it. Whoa! John, if you're watching, that was like the face hugger incident. Wow. Just jumped on me. Out of nowhere.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen.
If everybody can sit down, that'd be good.
Sit down.
Just a quick introduction. In fact, Gareth will introduce himself, and he will introduce Mr. Farage after that. So thank you very much for your time. Gareth.
So, I'd like to welcome you all to the Welsh Valleys. And
they're in the Welsh Valleys.
I'm Dr. Gareth Thomas. I'm the candidate for this area, and I'm here.
He's not a good public speaker.
To just quickly discuss how poorly the Welsh Labour Assembly have been. For 25 years, we've had nothing but, well, nothing really, within the Welsh Valleys. So, and being somebody who's actually been in hospital several times and in A&E 3 times in the last 8 days, I can tell you that the waiting lists are anything from
well, that's absolutely true for all of the country, not just Welsh Labour and Wales.
30 hours, and my mother waited 11 hours not being able to breathe in hospital. So,
which is terrible, by the way.
For Welsh Labour to say that it's actually 20 minutes and 4 hours out, it's a complete joke.
Of course.
I just, yeah, there's much more I'd like to talk about, but I'm here to actually introduce the man himself, Mr. Nigel Farage.
He's the man himself. Here he comes. Everybody's scrambling to see Nigel. Big Nigel's coming, people. I can't add you in now, John. It's a horror what all of them have done, Azur. It's a horror what all of them have done.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed.
Right, let's see what Big Nige has to say.
Good afternoon, everybody. Well, guess who's back?
Oh dear.
Back again.
You're not Slim Shady, Nigel.
I did not for one moment think
Twitter
I'd be
is
standing
working.
here and doing this ever again. But I am, and I'm doing it. But I come out
And
of
there's 48
retirement,
people
and I'm
watching on
doing
Twitter.
it
Hello.
because I genuinely feel that Britain is broken,
You can come and watch on the Chasing
But
Descent
nothing
YouTube
actually
channel and get
works
involved in the
anymore.
chat if you'd like.
that we're broken economically, as our national debt explodes, as
Correct.
our debt repayments are now over £90 billion a year.
Correct.
Interestingly, the same amount as the education budget. But of course, it's that generation that are going to have to pay for all of our mistakes for years to come. I feel increasingly we're broken socially,
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter what crime statistics the government quotes at us. We all feel less
Like I
safe
said, he's going to
on
speak
our
to you like
streets, and
normal
I think
people.
We've reached a point now where most crime even goes unreported.
That,
I
well,
mean,
it's not that it
absolutely
goes
no doubt
unreported, it's
that we
that
are
it
in
goes
decline culturally.
uninvestigated.
We've begun to forget who we are, what our history is, what we stand for. We've put up with the minds of our children from a young age right through university, frankly, being poisoned about what this country is and what it represents.
Correct.
And all of this would be manageable if there were some clear political solutions. But I think our politics is perhaps as broken as all of the other factors that I've listed. And I was very struck over the last couple of weeks. I've been involved in 2 7-way debates with party leaders and main representatives, one on the BBC, one on ITV, which descended really into a shouting match.
It was a cat fight between
Penny
Angela
Mordaunt
Rayner and Penny
Angela
Mordaunt.
Rayner.
Yeah.
And yet, when you listen to what they were arguing over, it seemed to me that the more they argued, the more they seemed the same. We're going through a breakdown of trust in politics, where manifestos, one after another, can keep making the same promises, and no one believes now.
Yes, the
frankly,
Labour Party
a
launched
word
the Communist
that they say,
manifesto
which is
the other day, didn't
why
they?
Today, specifically, is not a manifesto launch.
I mean, it kind of is.
Because if I say to you manifesto, your immediate word association is lie. And that is, I think, wholly unsurprising. There are also many millions of people out there, not just disappointed over manifestos, but a lot of Brexit voters, millions of Brexit voters out there, genuinely disappointed. They believe that by voting for Brexit, and actually the reason we saw the turnout on the scale that we did, is that we'd actually get a grip on mass migration.
I mean, we
into
definitely
Britain.
haven't,
We'd
have
get
we?
back
That
proper
once again, he's
control
speaking to
of our
people
borders,
like they're people.
and none of that's happened. In fact, the very opposite has happened. So there are feelings of disenchantment there as well. They, of course, also run through our millions of small businesses who thought, well, at least the regulations, at least the rules will get easier.
He's going to say they're the
Some people say to
opposition.
me, well, Nigel, that's a failure of Brexit. Oh, no, it isn't. It's a failure of a sovereign government to implement the will of the people and, indeed, its own manifesto.
Correct. Hello to 60 people watching
And I
on
also
Twitter.
think
You
there's
can
a
come to the
complete lack of
YouTube channel
leadership.
and jump in the chat.
I'm not,
Chasing
gonna
Dissent
say
on YouTube.
personally abusive things about Keir Starmer or Rishi Sunak. I'll leave that to the rest of the establishment to be rude about me, because I couldn't care less. It doesn't matter. I'm pretty used to it.
I mean, the dude's
We've even got
been
used to people throwing
assaulted
things at
multiple
me, but there we
times.
are.
Yeah, he's been assaulted multiple times already on the campaign trail, hasn't he?
But there is
I don't
a
think he
lack
cares
of
about some
leadership.
words.
People actually need some sense of being inspired, some sense of believing there's somebody up at the front that believes in what they say, says what they believe, and is going to show a way forward for the country. And I don't believe we have any of that either.
Yeah, but
So
it all sounds good so
I've come
far,
back into
Nigel.
this
But
because I think there is now
and I say, but
the most enormous
you're
gap
still a politician.
that exists between the two big Westminster parties. And I say Westminster because it is very much Westminster and Oxford University thinking that dominates these parties. A huge gap between that and the conversations that I hear being had by families and people around the rest of the country. I could see it before the Brexit referendum. I could see this huge gap between our political class and the people. And the Brexit result,
But
the shock
once
of that
again,
result,
is Nigel part
showed
of the
us
political
that it
class?
existed. I now believe that gap
That's, I guess,
to
up
be
for you to
even
decide.
bigger than it was before that referendum back in June 2016. So we've chosen to launch our contract with you.
Which is just a manifesto under another name.
We are not
Come on,
pretending
Nigel.
that we are going to win this general election.
Told you.
We are a very, very new political party, and we would have much preferred this election to take place in October or November. I personally was a bit crestfallen initially by what Rishi Sunak said when he announced July the 4th, but we are running very fast to catch up. And I genuinely believe that our campaign now has some momentum around the country. We've seen that in some of the opinion polls, and particularly encouraging a rapidly increasing number of young people, and I'm talking the 18 to 24-year age group, are now coming to reform UK's cause. So this is not something
I have noticed mass momentum,
That's not
especially on
possible
platforms like
in this
TikTok,
election.
for reform.
Although this
That's
election
a fact.
is, for our party and for me, the first important step on the road to 2029. Our aim and our ambition is to establish a bridgehead in Parliament and to become a real opposition to a Labour government. And I say that because I can't see Sir Ed
And
Davey
I told you once again,
real opposition,
this was what he was going to
because
say.
actually, on many fundamental policies, the Liberal Democrats and Labour, frankly, don't vary very much.
Precisely
And I
true.
certainly can't see the Conservatives providing opposition because they don't agree on anything. They spend most of their days arguing among themselves.
Also
and they're
true.
split down the middle when it comes to policy. They're certainly split down the middle in terms of their attitude towards me. Goodness gracious.
Thank you, John.
You had Suella Braverman virtually proposing political marriage over the course of the weekend, whilst at the same time
70 people
Lord
watching live on
Cameron,
Twitter.
Goodness me, they dragged him back.
Come on over
Talk
to
about
the YouTube
back
channel for
again,
the same
crikey.
thing, but with a chat.
And we had Lord Cameron generally being fairly abusive.
Lord
And that sums
Cameron
up
of
where the
Chipping
Conservative
Norton,
Party is.
alleged
So we're a party that knows
copulator
what
of
we believe.
pigs' heads.
You know, we get the fundamental principles of what we're about. You know, we believe in the family. We believe in community.
I
We
believe in the
country.
family and community.
We know exactly what we believe in. And our aim is to provide clear, consistent and growing leadership during the course of the next Parliament. But not just in the Parliament, around the country too. And it's my aim that we turn this into a big, genuine mass movement of people. And I believe that that is actually highly achievable. So we've chosen to launch our contract in Wales, which seems highly, highly appropriate. After
Is that
all,
because, you know,
Labour have
Lee
been in power
Evans
here
was trying to insult you a
since
bit the other night on
1997.
ITV?
So perhaps there are some lessons that we can learn from 25 years of Labour government in Wales that are perhaps what we might be looking forward to.
That it
in just a
needs
few
to
weeks'
stop?
time when Sir Keir Starmer becomes our Prime Minister. In Wales, taxes are higher. Yes, they are. Council tax is higher, on average about £500 per median property.
man, that
than it is
sucks.
in England. Interesting, isn't it, that when the question is being asked of Starmer and others on council tax in England, they've precious little to say. So the people in Wales pay more taxes, and spending per capita is higher in Wales than it is in England. There's more money being spent on you, on public services, than there is on the other side of the bridge. And it's interesting to think, isn't it, in those debates I've
Well,
been
they'll say
in,
taxes are higher,
all anybody
therefore
seems to
we
talk
can
about
spend
is
more.
more investment in the NHS, more investment in our public services, by which they really mean they're going to spend more of your taxes. And perhaps that wouldn't matter if it led to better delivery.
But it won't.
But the figures in Wales are
It definitely
truly
won't.
astonishing. Gareth talked about this just a moment ago. You know, waiting times in Wales on the NHS are exactly 50% longer than they are on the other side.
And I mean, they're
of the
pretty
bridge.
bad here.
Education.
When I had my
which has drifted
appendix
in
out a few
Wales
months, well, about a year ago now,
in
I was
a
left all
leftward,
night
PC,
on the
woke
floor
direction.
with morphine
And
in
you
me,
can just look
in
at
pain.
the OECD tables on English, mathematics.
And
any
that's just
subject
my
you
personal
like,
experience.
You'll see that Wales has fallen further behind England. Not personally that I believe England's very good. And a Labour government in Wales reduces your freedoms, reduces your choices, ends right to buy,
I
and many
think a Labour
other schemes
government
which damage
anywhere is
aspiration,
going to reduce your
particularly
freedoms
for young
and reduce
people
your
who
choices.
want to
That's
get on.
going to happen.
And of course,
But the same with a
crowning
Tory government.
glory of 25 years of Welsh government in Wales, the imposition of 20-mile-per-hour speed limits.
Whoa-hey!
Well, it led, didn't it, to one of the most astonishing petitions you've ever seen. The percentage of Welsh people that signed that petition. Well, I mean, I've never seen a petition actually quite like it, although, of course, we're rather used to all of that with you, Les, and Mr. Khan up in the other end of the country in London.
That's
so
very
it gives us
true.
some idea that in terms of outright policy, Labour's not very different to the Conservatives. It's just more incompetent.
Yep.
It just wastes even more money than Conservative governments do. But here's
Told
the
you,
point
he's just going to speak to people
about
like they're
things
normal
going
people.
so badly wrong in Wales over 25 years. There's been no proper, clear, consistent opposition voice. Frankly, the Conservatives in the Senate have been feeble, to say the very least.
Yeah, but even the
And that is
Conservatives in
argument. Wales
charge
really
here
gives
in the
us
United
the
Kingdom as
perfect
a whole
example
have been
of what I'm
feeble,
talking
to
about.
say the least.
We need to have good, strong opposition that can mobilise people in very, very large numbers. So we know what we stand for, we know what we're for. We're for controlled borders, we're for promoting genuine economic growth. We're for helping the little guy. You know, millions of men and women out there trying to get on, trying to do their own thing, and yet
yeah,
a Labour
hopefully,
and Conservative
I
Party
say
that only ever
hopefully,
listen
many of
to
you
the
watching
giant global
right now are,
corporates.
you know what the
We're about
squeeze
trying
feels like.
to restore some trust in politics. You might dislike
I'm not
what
sure
we
you
say.
can do that.
You might not want to vote for what we say, but at least we do say what we mean. And we want to have an absolutely radical rethink of the way in which our public services are run. And yes, that does include the National Health Service.
Yeah, I agree
It's
with
been
that,
very,
because
very
I've made
difficult
this point on the
to
show
have any
for
conversation
years
about
now.
the NHS over the course of
That the
25
NHS
years
needs
that
to
I've
be
been
gutted
involved
of
in
middle
politics,
management,
without someone
diversity
pointing and
hires
screaming,
or diversity
"You want to
managers,
privatise it."
museum
All we want
curators,
is an NHS
piano players in
that
the
is
lobbies.
free at the point of delivery that actually works.
Just
And how
gut
we
it.
get there, frankly, I
Spend
don't
that
think
money
most people
on
could give a
doctors
damn about.
and nurses.
So they're the things that we're going for. And of course, we would like the state to take far less of our money that it's currently doing, and will go on taking more and more.
Certainly,
I'm sure.
yes, but they should also be taking less of
I've
our
said from the
freedoms
start,
than they're
this
currently
should
taking.
be the immigration election.
Told you!
I have no doubt about that.
Bingo!
I think the population explosion,
I said he would use that
the impact
phrase.
it's had on people's lives is the dominant
I
issue.
also said he would use the term
How can you
population
discuss
explosion. He's done it.
NHS
Buzzwords
waiting
here.
lists without discussing the fact that the population has risen by 6 million people since David Cameron came to power back in 2010.
If I had John's that
How can
true
you
button,
talk about a shortage
I'd
of
press
housing
it.
where we need to build one new dwelling every 2 minutes just to cope with current levels of net migration? How can you talk about any of these things? So we believe this is what we should be talking about. But of course the others would rather not discuss it.
And you
The
know what? I
Conservatives are
think the
attempting
majority of the public
for a
would
fifth
agree with that.
manifesto in a row to tell us they'll reduce the numbers. But then they told us in 2010 and 2015 and 2017
They
they'd
did.
reduced net migration to
They said
tens
it
of
again
thousands
and
a
again
year.
and
They
again
promised
and
in
again, and they have
2019,
never done
with
it.
Brexit controls, we'd massively reduced the levels of unskilled labour coming into Britain. Well, it's running at getting on for net 750,000 a year.
That's
When
quite
you
a
look at
few
those that
people,
have come and stayed, it's
especially
incredible
who,
to
you know,
think
are then accessing those
that 1
public
in 30
services.
people on the streets of Britain today have come here in the last 2 years alone.
Which,
Never
if
before in
true, is an
history have we
insanely
ever
large
seen
number.
literally anything like it. And as for Labour, well, it's
And
extraordinary.
I'm not saying it isn't true.
That they launched their manifesto with their 6 key priorities, not even mentioning immigration, not even mentioning the impact on people's lives. So we want to have a proper, honest debate about it, and we believe that an overall
Although
freeze
he's not saying,
on net migration numbers is what we need for a
he's
few
not
years
saying what needs
help
to be
us at
said about
least
the cost of living
try
crisis.
to catch up. We also have to
Migration
say
plays a
it's only
part.
right and proper.
but the
You only
current
get benefits
cost of living
in this
crisis
country
has been caused
once you've been
wholly
here for 5
by the
years,
lockdown.
obeyed the law,
by closing the
and paid your
economy.
taxes.
That
Again,
is what has caused
these are
it.
policies.
And yet no
These are
one, not
policies
one of
that
them,
are
has got the
discriminatory
balls
in
to say
favour
it.
of British taxpayers and British people.
Not even
If you go to
Nigel.
work in Australia, you won't get benefits or dental care. You'll have to pay into the system for years and obey the law. We're doing what a good, sensible country should do.
I'm sorry if
Recognising
saying that
the
upsets
first
anyone.
duty of a British government is to its own people.
Jeffro says that's
and
more
not
than the
to
population
anybody
of the
else.
state I
And as
live
far
in.
as
Only
Dover's
500,000
concerned,
people
well,
here. Well,
I was going out into the Channel 4 years ago, day after day,
He was.
filming the small dinghies coming, predicting that vast numbers would arrive unless we changed policy and started deporting people who came illegally, something, by the way, that we used to do up until 2010. You know, the last years of the Labour government, we were deporting up to 40,000
Yeah,
people a year
the Labour
who'd
Party
come
were
illegally.
deporting
We've
people.
lost our way. And part of the reason for that is a court in Strasbourg that's become increasingly
Tasmania.
activist.
Wow. Small island off
They've
the
even
coast of
interfered
Australia.
recently, with the Swiss government telling them they have an obligation
Well, hello there,
under
Jeffro.
international law to maintain net zero policies. Well, the Swiss government have decided to ignore them, but we think the only way to really fully restore sovereignty, to decide who can come in, who can stay, is by leaving that European Court of Human Rights. It is completely out of date. It's not serving the purpose for which we signed up to back over 70 years ago. But of course, this all leads on to the cost of living crisis. Rents are up by, on
Say
average,
it.
20 to 25%.
Say it and I'll give you some
across
respect.
the whole UK since 2021 alone. Is it any wonder, with an exploding population, that rents are going up? So a freeze on overall numbers would at least begin to
Come on,
reduce
Nigel.
the
You're
pressure.
so close.
And of course, one of
Say
the
it.
biggest bills that families face,
Say
and the
the
lower
lockdowns
your overall
and
income
furlough
is, the bigger
are the
this
reason
particular bill matters.
that you are in the
It's
cost
energy.
of living crisis you're in.
It's energy. It's whether
Say
you're
it,
filling
Nigel.
your car or whether you're paying for your heating. And we have been following net zero policies.
Net zero
championed by
policies
Mrs.
are a
May,
race to the bottom.
enthusiastically embraced by Boris Johnson, and now being virtually copied by the Labour Party.
They are a race
We're
to the
pursuing
bottom.
net zero policies that are self-destructive. Just look at what it's doing to industry. What's happening to steelmaking in South Wales? It's going.
It's going.
But somehow government thinks that's good.
But China will continue
because
to do
we
it.
reduce the amount of carbon dioxide
China will
that we emit.
continue
But we
to
don't.
Do whatever the
We
hell
just
they
export
please.
the production of that CO2 as the goods are made somewhere else.
Carbon
In this case, I'm
offsetting, one of the
particularly
biggest
talking about
scams on
primary,
earth.
not secondary steel. And then we import the goods back into our country. So we want to get rid of the subsidies that are paid to green
I could
energy
start a
companies
carbon offsetting
by loading
company right
taxes
now.
on the electricity bills
It's
of
a
everybody
scam,
in this country.
but-
We've been doing this now for the best part of 20 years. But we also have to try and find out a way that people can be better off. National government, opposition, much of the media.
People
seems
can
to
be
want to
better
bow
off
down
when their
to the
politicians
god
tell the
of
truth.
GDP. Our gross domestic product rose last year. Isn't that great?
Yeah, but it didn't. It did,
Well,
but
if you
not
massively
per
increase the
capita.
population, it's perhaps not surprising with more people
It's reduced
that the
per
overall
capita.
size of the economy would grow. But here's the key. Coinciding with record levels of migration into Britain, we have now seen 6 consecutive quarters of GDP per head falling.
Yeah.
We're getting poorer.
Do you know why that is?
Of cheap,
Say
unskilled
it.
foreign labour may work for your big multinational company.
It has
who want as cheap a
definitely
labour as
contributed to
possible
it.
and couldn't give a damn.
But the main
about
reason
social
is the closure of
consequences,
the
but it's
economy
not
and the
working.
blank check written
And we
to the
very
middle
much wanna
classes
be
so they
a
could
party
sit
that
at
is on
home
the side
and bake their
of
banana bread.
working people.
And this is why
And that is why, and I think this is perhaps the most transformative
I struggle
thing,
to put trust in
in
anybody,
this
because if they
document,
can't
which,
even
by the way,
say
has been
this
so
basic
excellently
truth.
Worked on for months and produced by Richard Tice. He deserves the credit for this, not me. I'm a Johnny-come-lately when it comes to this document.
I'm just on the cover.
But I think the most innovative thing, policy that we've put out in here, is to raise the level at which people start paying tax.
I agree with this.
£20,000.
I agree with this
Why?
wholeheartedly.
Well, number one, it would take 7 million people out of the tax system altogether. A devilishly complicated tax system. That would be a good thing.
We've got lower
of
VAT
course,
as well.
For those on
Lower
low pay.
VAT and give people
Be a good
instant
thing for many
spending power.
pensioners, who, if they have a small private income, supplementing their state income, are being dragged into the tax system. Not a very good policy for local accountants, obviously, because they love the complexity.
Of course they do.
Not a good policy for civil servants, because we could probably get rid of a few with a mass simplification like this, but also a huge incentive, a massive incentive to get people back to work. And I'll talk a little bit more about that right at the end. We
Still,
also think
lower
inheritance
VAT,
tax. It depends
give
where you
people
live
instant
and what
spending
property
power in their
values are, and
pockets.
this is
They'll
not as
go out
relevant
and they'll
here
spend more.
as it perhaps is in the home counties. But, you know, an average semi-detached house in South London is now, when the parents die,
I'm never going to be
attracting
able to purchase a home.
inheritance tax.
I
This
live
was
in a
never
council
designed
house.
for people in the
I
middle.
live
It was always
in
designed
relative-
for those at the upper income
You know,
scale.
I
So we
can't
go
afford all
to
of
£2
my
million
bills, you know.
on the state before anybody pays
I'll never be able to
inheritance
purchase
tax.
a
So
house.
simplification matters to us. But it's wealth creation. You know, Labour have launched their manifesto talking about wealth creation. But I didn't see a single thing in there that would create wealth.
Of course not.
And that is because our political class is stuck in the
In
global
fact,
corporate
Labour
mindset.
want to punish wealth.
I saw this in 20 years in Brussels.
And that is,
when it was the influence
you know,
of
if for
big
someone who has
businesses
nothing,
with their
I
lobby that
absolutely
dominated the
celebrate
way,
success.
Totally dominated the way that politicians
People should be able to be
thought
successful
this sort of
and not be
unholy
penalised for that.
triumvirate, if you like, of big business, big banks,
And
big politics. And
Labour
we
want to
genuinely
penalise
are
success.
on the side of the 5.5 million men and women out there running their own small companies, acting as sole traders, who feel government is their enemy.
the government
It's their
is
enemy,
their
whatever the
enemy,
colour of the
because
rosette.
especially a Labour
Just look at these
government, because
crazy
if they become
rules.
successful, Labour are
How
going to
difficult they've made it
penalise
for
them by
self-employed
taking
people
more off them,
right across the
percentage-wise.
United Kingdom. Think about what they did to corporation tax last year, putting it up by 30%, and being surprised that many small and medium businesses now don't have as much capital, perhaps, to reinvest.
And then if you
or as
do
much
things like
incentive
raise the minimum
to make
wage,
profit
it
as
sounds
they
great
had
in principle,
before.
but it will make businesses
And the other group of
fold,
people
or
who
it
feel
will cause
betrayed
businesses to fire
by the
people
lack of
or
Brexit
raise their
delivery.
prices.
There's the broader population
not
who voted
thinking.
for lower numbers, but there's the business
They
community
say these things that
who genuinely
sound
thought
good,
and
but they're
hoped
not good.
that by getting rid, by streamlining so many European Union rules, that their lives would get easier. They haven't.
No.
They haven't. The government blames COVID. Because of COVID, we couldn't do these things.
No,
Well,
because
I
of
would
your
argue
response to
they
it.
didn't have to lock us down repeatedly. Once was probably more than enough. But we have not. And you know, Rishi Sunak and others promised they'd get rid
So
of
close.
thousands of EU laws.
So
They simply haven't
close.
done it. And actually,
So
in some
close,
sectors,
Nigel, this close.
In some sectors, the regulatory authorities in Britain have made life for men and women running small businesses even harder than it was during the time of EU membership. So we believe that genuine economic growth doesn't come from half a dozen giant multinationals.
It comes from lower
It comes from
taxes, giving
simultaneous
people more
actions.
spending power.
Hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people, deciding they're going to have a go. And of course, these people don't benefit on holiday pay, they don't benefit on sickness pay. These actually, really, economically, these men and women are the heroes of the country. They deserve encouragement, and the more people that do it, the greater the wealth that we will create. And we need wealth.
I'd like
Of
to
course we
create
need
some wealth. I'm
One
not
of the
going to
areas where we
lie.
need to spend money is defence. I can't think the world has been in a more perilous place at any point in my lifetime. I was born after the Cuban Missile
As
Crisis.
John just said in the
Clarified.
chat on YouTube, the disproportionate government response to a seasonal
And
respiratory
frankly,
virus.
this
And if you want to
balmy
join that
idea
chat, go find
of
Chasing
saying we're
Dissent on
going back to
YouTube, where we're
national
live
service.
streaming
Oh, no,
at the
we're
same
not.
time, if you're over on Twitter.
All we're going to do is take 30,000 young people and at vast expense give them a year's training. What we ought to be
Your
doing
poor girlfriend,
is saying, look,
Jeffro.
there were 100,000 people in the army in 2010. There are 72,000 people in the army now. Let's not recruit 30,000 part-timers. Let's actually recruit 30,000 people full-time to be in the services, and a similar principle, of course, would apply across the Navy and the Air Force. And in terms of expenditure, look...
Yeah, but how are you going to recruit those people? Because if you've seen the recruitment adverts as of late,
as quickly as they
there's
possibly
something
could.
else.
We've neglected defence very, very badly. Now, in terms of our public services, be it policing, be it prisons, be it the National Health Service, there's certainly a radical cultural rethink that needs to go on. I've been fascinated going around the country.
I'm not
in the
sure
last couple of weeks,
cultural's
talking
the
to
right
people,
word.
parents particularly, about their real fear of knife crime, growing fear of knife crime. And this is not from the 18-pluses, it's going right down in the teenage years. And we have no doubt that an approach to policing such as stop and search, and don't worry if you're called prejudiced or you're doing something wrong,
well,
actually you'll save lives.
I agree with this,
to get
because
much tougher on low-level
if
crime.
you know, if a certain demographic
can you
does
believe
more
You could all go out and
of a
shoplift,
certain
it's
thing,
fine.
then
Up to £200
you have to take that information into account. Of course you do.
Approach culturally across crime and policing, and with the big one, the NHS. Look, what we are going to campaign for is a genuine radical rethink. You know,
Yeah,
we all
gut the
grew
middle
up
managers. Gut them.
loving the NHS.
Take them out.
Being deeply grateful to the NHS.
And if you
It was
agree with what I'm
there
saying, please hit the
and a
like button.
fantastic thing. And I've been trying to
There's
make these
so much money
many of these
being
arguments,
wasted.
Actually, I've been trying to make for well over a decade.
It's being
that we
wasted
have to have a
with
rethink. And I think
diversity
perhaps
managers,
back in 2015, when I led a
curators.
different party in the general election,
I mean,
perhaps was
I
just
have
a bit
I
ahead
have a
of the
friend
curve.
who works in admin
Perhaps I
in the
was saying
NHS, and
things
in
that
order
people
to get
didn't
anything
want
done,
to listen
she
to.
has to ask her
I get
manager,
the
who has to
sense
ask
that
his
they
manager,
are
who has to ask
listening
his manager.
now. We are not getting
That's
bang for our
ridiculous.
buck, and there's a growing level of disenchantment that the health service simply isn't fit for purpose in the way that it, and not just the way that it used to be, the way that we want it to be. So let's look at other funding models. Let's look at how the French do it. Let's be radical.
I'm not even
in
sure
our
we need to
thinking.
look at other funding
And
models.
my
It
final
gets
point's
over
on
£1 billion
benefits.
every 3 days. Spend it
It's
more
quite
wisely.
easy
Direct
for those
as
in
much
work
money
and
towards the
working
front
damn
line
hard
and gut out
to
anything
say
irrelevant.
Lazy scroungers on benefits. It's the sort of conversation you hear in the pub. But actually, there are a lot of people on benefits who do not want to be on benefits. They want to go back to work.
I'm a disabled man,
The
and I
system
want to
massively
build something for myself.
disincentivises this.
I
Because
want
if they
to
work
build
for more
something
than
for
16
myself.
hours a week, they start to lose the benefits, and they'll lose more benefits than they'll earn in
I
going
can't
out
do a
and
9
getting
to
money.
5
a
because
trap,
there's
a
no way
benefits trap.
that I can guarantee what
And that isn't
type
good for
of
people.
situation my health's
and it
going to be
certainly
in from
isn't
any
good for
day to
people
day.
Psychologically.
But I want to build something
And
for
that is where
myself.
raising the level at which we start paying tax to £20,000 a year really, really matters. This is something that would make work pay. That would make a massive difference to our societies, massive difference to nearly every one of our communities. And of course, for those on benefits who see it as a holiday, quite extraordinary, isn't it, that you could have an online consultation and be signed off on the sick with depression. And that, by the way, I'm not knocking those that genuinely have mental health issues. Of course I'm not. But what I am saying, it's ludicrous that that can happen with an online consultation. And we want to make it clear.
Well, as long as you've got a diagnosis from a
once they've had
genuine
2
medical
offers of a
professional,
job,
I don't
if they
actually think
take
that's
one of those
ludicrous.
jobs,
But
they lose their benefits. And I think, again, that is something that working people would agree with. That outlines the broad principles of our contract. As a party, we're unashamedly patriotic. As a party, we believe that British history
Raise
is a
the
great
tax
thing
threshold,
and should be
lower
taught
VAT.
properly and with fairness and with balance. But as a party, we're radical. We're radical in terms of the way we want to change public services.
So what he's
We're
basically
radical
saying is, we will
in
speak
terms of
to
the
you
way
like
the
you're normal
education
people.
system
And I
in this
get where
country
he's
needs
coming
to
from.
operate. We're radical in terms of our simplification.
And I see why so many
of
people are
the tax
gravitating
system.
to him.
We're radical in terms of our view on on issues such as the electoral system, the House of Lords, our right to a referendum. And you can be both. You can be traditional and radical at the same time. Because we're proud of who we are, but we feel at the moment politics and government isn't fit for purpose. We want real, genuine change to give us a better, brighter and stronger future. And I promise you all, this is step one. Our real ambition is the 2029 general election. But this is our first big push. I've been back in
Random
this job
drugs
for a couple
tests
of
for
weeks.
MPs like there is for construction workers. Jeffro, that's a good
We're doing
shout.
really rather well. Thank you. Now, thank you.
I agree with him. The young especially are starting to really gravitate towards him. They are doing well.
Now, I was asked to do the easy bit today. I was asked to give you the vision. I'm Mr. Nice today. Mr. Nasty is Richard Tice today, who's going to tell you what taxes are going to go up and where the savings are going to come from. Richard, thank you.
Okay. Guess what? That's something that Labour haven't done. They haven't said what taxes.
Thank you, Nigel. Thank you. Well, a very good afternoon.
Oh,
It's
God,
great to
isn't
be
Richard
here.
so dull?
Rarely been
I'm
introduced
sorry,
as,
but
Mr.
he's so
Nasty.
dull.
So, all these bold plans, and they are exciting, and they are attracting huge appeal out.
How could
on
he be the
stump.
leader?
Something's going on out there. It's quite remarkable.
It's quite
Word is
remarkable.
spreading about Reform UK, and as Nigel just touched on, some of these key policies are really gaining ground. So how do we pay for them? Well,
let's hear.
I talked about some of it last Monday. But here's the thing. Lots of people in the media say, oh, it's unfunded tax cuts.
Unfunded
let's get
tax
this real.
cuts.
It's unfunded spending. That's what's got us into a right pickle. Our fiscal deficit in the last year to April, no one talks about it. We spent about 120 billion more than we earned.
Low.
There's a few key big things here. And unlike some of the other people in their plans,
They
other
don't have the
parties,
balls to say it.
they're not
I'm
honest
sorry,
with
but they
you
don't.
About the costs and how you're going to pay for it. We are, because it's set out in this contract. So
It's a
last week,
manifesto,
I spoke
Richard.
about
Call it what it bloody
this
is.
issue of the Bank of England paying your taxpayers' cash on all the money that was printed. And it's about 35 billion a year based on current interest rates. It's quite hard to explain, but here's the point. It's about £700 per year. You know you're making progress when within 2 hours of finishing that press conference last week, I was attacked by none other than the lobby group for the big banks.
Of
vested
course.
interests, who seem to think that they have a right, the big banks, to make big profits on the money that was printed to save them going bust. Really? Let me repeat.
Quantitative easing,
We are the
ladies
real
and
party on
gentlemen.
the side of the workers.
Is he going to tell you
Not
how
the
that
Labour
works? Because it's
Party, what I
actually
call
not
a
that
cafe
complicated.
latte Labour Party that's on the side of big business. So that's the first thing. When they printed all this money, they didn't tell us that when interest rates went back up, it would cost us an absolute fortune transferring our money to the big city banks. They didn't tell us that, but that's what's happened.
But that's a given.
Unfunded spending. The second big item, of course, is the cost of net zero.
Yes.
So when
It's
Theresa
a
May
race
had
to the bottom. It's a
90-minute
race to
debate
the
back in, I think
Stone
it was
Age.
2019, 90 minutes to sign up to net zero, put it in legislation. No one said, well, hang on, how much is this going to cost?
Doesn't matter
What's
how
the
much it's
spending?
going to cost. It won't work.
The truth is, even if they had that debate, they wouldn't have had a clue. You've got people like the Climate Change Committee saying it's 1.2 billion. You've got the OBR saying it's 1.4 billion.
That's cheap.
You've got the National Grid, perhaps being a little bit more honest, saying it's 3 trillion. Sorry, those are trillion numbers. The numbers are so big. 1.2 trillion,
Yeah,
On but
trillion.
4
I was going to say
the National
billion.
Grid says it's
Come on, Richard.
3 trillion. Impossible to work out what that means. 3 trillion? I mean, is it 100,000 per household? No one talked about this spending, the cost to get there. Apparently it's going to save
It's
the planet,
a
and
race
therefore the
to
cost
the bottom.
is irrelevant. Really? This is real money.
Of course
This is
it
real
is.
cash.
And
it's
it's
all
going
of
to
our
be
cash.
spent on
And apparently it's going to be good
stupid
for the
things like
environment.
wind
Well,
farms and
where
solar
I'm
farms,
campaigning
which are
to
not
be elected,
efficient
one
enough.
of the big debates
They're
is
not
the
efficient enough.
implications, the consequences, which is happening now all over the country, of this drive towards offshore renewable energy. But you've got to
It's going to
transmit
cost my
that
children's
electricity. How are we
future,
going to transmit
Jeffro.
it? Oh, I know. Big 50-metre pylons going hundreds of miles across the English countryside. How's that good for our environment?
It's not.
And who's going to pay for it?
Or I like to call the wind farms bird
All those
killers,
who voted for this,
because that's what they
didn't tell
are.
us that, did they? They didn't tell us how much it would cost and how much it would blight the English countryside, our environment. How's that good for the environment?
It's not.
We reckon
No.
that if you scrap net zero, then the saving to the taxpayer every year for the next 25 years would be in the order of £30 billion per year.
I
What
don't
is
doubt that figure.
That's about £600 per adult. That's what that is. 600 quid per adult.
However,
So 1,200 quid for a two-person household.
what does that
every
mean
year.
in real terms?
This is real money. It's your money.
And it
they
doesn't
didn't
mean you're.
tell you.
It doesn't
They
mean you're going to
deliberately
save
misled
that, because
the
what
British
else are they
people
going to spend
about
that
the cost
money on,
implications
or what are they going to
of net
use
zero. And as
to
Nigel
tax
quite
it?
rightly said, all you're doing, you're not reducing global CO2. You're just shipping it somewhere else. And we're the mugs that are paying for it. And it's got to stop. And we're the only party that has the courage to say this is unfunded spending, it's costing us a fortune, it's not going to save the planet, and it's got to stop.
Correct.
30 billion a year.
That's correct, and this
Now,
is
the
why
third big item,
people are flocking to
and
reform.
again, some of the press will attack us. One of the mainstream broadcast journals, newspapers this morning tried to do an analysis of some of these costs. The thing was, though, because they didn't want to actually tell us the truth about these numbers, they just talked about in generalities.
That's what they do.
But we all know taxes have gone up to record levels, and yet the quality of the outcomes of public services has declined. That can only mean that we're spending money badly.
Yep.
If taxes had gone up and the quality of public services had improved no end and waiting lists had dropped to zero, you might say, well, money's being spent well.
But it's not, though,
So when I
because,
talk about
like I
waste in
said,
public
I already gave you
services,
my
waste in
personal
public
anecdote
spending,
of being left on the floor with
particularly in things
morphine
like the NHS,
whilst my
I always
appendix
get
was nearly
contacted
exploding.
within a couple of days by nurses, anaesthetists, surgeons, doctors who say,
I had to
"Richard,
have it out in an
heavens,
emergency surgery, and thankfully
someone
they
is
did
actually
it.
telling it as it is. The
But an
waste
entire night I
is
was on a
everywhere.
floor
It's extraordinary.
in an A&E department
And I've got a very simple slogan.
just a year ago.
It's what we do in business. And we come from the world of business. We're fixers, we're sorters, we're doers, we make things happen. It's very simple. You've got to cut out the waste from the back office and invest it in the front office.
That's exactly what
how
you've got to
grow
do
a
to the
business.
NHS.
That's how you improve the surplus that you make.
What I've been
That's how you
saying for
improve
years.
the quality of your product. And that's what we've got to do with the public sector. Instead, we learn that since about 2019, there's an extra 600,000 people working in the public sector, but productivity's gone down. So we have to be honest with
That's
people.
not
And in the
shocking
same
when,
way that all of us struggling with our
like
bills
I said,
at
my
home, we're
friend
saying,
who
well,
works in admin in the
I've got to
NHS
save
just to
5
ask
quid
their
in a
manager,
hundred.
who asked their manager, who asked their manager.
But you've still got to pay the bills, the rent, the mortgage, the food. So you've got to buy more wisely. That's what we do in business. Nigel talked about small businesses. We're all looking at our bills. And in business, you say to your spending managers, folks, we've got to cut the cost, but we've still got to provide the product.
Yeah.
So you've got to save 5 quid in 100. And bluntly, that's your job. And if you
He
don't,
might be a dullard,
you're
but
fired.
Tice is right.
I know it's tough, but these are tough times. And when the going gets tough, guess what? The tough get going.
You didn't have to
That's
say
the
that,
reality.
Richard.
And that's what's got to happen in the public sector. When they introduced the Equalities Act in 2010, and all well-meaning, well-intended things like diversity, inclusion and equality. It sounds lovely. But they never told us about the cost of it, did they? They never said it's going to cost hundreds and hundreds of millions every year, and productivity is going to go down as you move towards mediocrity. So I simply don't accept the nonsense that's talked by those in the Treasury and in the main two parties who say
most of what they're saying is
can't
correct.
save any money in the public sector. It is utter nonsense. We know it's nonsense because of those extra 600,000 people.
And I
we know it's
appreciate
nonsense
that they're
because the size of the cake
telling it
that
straight
Nigel's talked
rather
about in
than
the NHS, it's up to about 11%
trying
of
to
the
give
size
you
of the cake, and
political
yet
double
waiting
non-speak.
lists have gone down. That is the proof that we can spend money better. We can save money in the back office and invest it in the front office. And I know it sounds glib, but the numbers are big. But if you save £5 in 100 in wasteful public sector spending everywhere, the quangos, the commissions, the local authorities, the government departments, it soon adds up. It's 50 billion quid plus or minus. These are big numbers. Per adult, it's about £1,000 a head. This is
but
real
are
cash
we going to
with which
save
we
that
can
money?
completely transform the way we run our economy, and as Nigel touched on, the tax cuts, in order that actually we can make work pay.
I find it
we can make
suspicious, that's all,
businesses
that he's not
grow.
saying that's
We
going to
can
be money in
encourage
your
risk-taking.
pocket.
Let's remember,
Find that
the biggest risk
suspicious.
in life is never taking one. That's what small business folk do. Those are the big savings. On top of that, if we get 1 million people off benefits back into work, there's huge billions of savings. Oh, another bugbear of ours, HS2. I mean, the Prime Minister scrapped the top end. Prime Minister, well, if you're going to do a job, for heaven's sake, just do it properly. Just scrap the rest of it. Billions more there.
Yeah, but there's so much money
Foreign
already been
aid.
piled into it.
We know
Stations
there's
being
huge
built.
amounts of waste in
Can't
foreign
just
aid.
abandon a
We could
half-built
reduce
station.
the amount we spend on foreign aid, saving another 6 billion or so every year. These are huge savings. This is a completely different way.
Don't forget,
of
folks,
running
if you're
our
watching
economy.
on Twitter or X, then please feel free
I
to go over
believe
to
it's achievable.
YouTube and
We know
find the
it's
Chasing
achievable.
Descent channel
That's
where we're
why we
also
put this
live
forward.
to get
And we
involved
know
in
the
the chat
current
and
status
subscribe
quo,
over there as well. We'd really
the main
appreciate
two
that.
parties tinkering at the edges. There's no growth. You can't tax your way out of this crisis. We've got to grow our way out of this crisis. And this, folks, is how you pay for it. We've got to stop paying the interest on the printed money. We've got to scrap net zero. And we've got to cut out the waste in the back office of the public sector and invest it in the front line. If we do these things, then we can make this country grow again. We can afford to invest where we need to invest in growth.
See, what he's
tax
saying is not
cuts,
untrue.
defence, and all the other
Not
things
untrue.
in this great contract. So I commend
Manifesto,
this to
just
you.
say it,
Reform
manifesto.
UK commends this to you. This is how we pay for it. It can be done. No one's saying it's easy. Truth is, life isn't easy. But if you're not prepared to get tough with wasteful spending, then we are heading towards a very bad place. That's what we're about.
Under
That's
the
what
Labour
Reform UK
government,
is
there's
about,
going to be
and
far
that's why
more
Reform
wasteful
UK is
spending,
going
far
up in the
more than is
polls.
even in
Word
their
is spreading.
manifesto. They're
People
going to...
love common sense policies and a common sense approach to what we do. I commend this contract to you. Thank you very much.
He's so dull, though.
So, you've had the nice bit, you've had the challenging bit, and then the next plan is we're going to take some questions from the press. There are then one-to-ones. We're also going to, it's very important with a contract is not valid, of course, unless you sign it. So we will be signing the contract in due course. But Nigel, let's do some questions.
Let's see some questions.
So, who's first from the questions? Alex.
Thank you very much indeed.
Oh, yeah, get the mic over there. Come on, girl.
Hello, Mr. Farage, Mr. Tice, Alex Forsyth, BBC News.
BBC
You've got
News.
24 pages here. You talked about the costings, you talked about the spendings, but some of the stuff in here, a freezing immigration, NHS waiting lists down to 0, more police officers. You accuse other parties of broken promises, but isn't this really a list of unrealistic promises, a wish list rather than...
So this is the BBC just bashing for the sake of bashing. Here we go.
That sound popular and hope you get votes that you never plan to deliver on.
It is a promise that This is what we're going to campaign for over the course of the next 5 years. These are the principles, these are the issues. Richard's talked about the way we can pay for things, but this is what we're going to campaign for. I said at the very start, we are not going to be in government this time round. But we are going to provide a voice.
Few sound issues going on there,
and this
guys.
Outlines where we're going to challenge Labour. On many of these things that we're discussing in this document, I mean, Labour don't even want to talk about these issues. So no, I think we've laid out very clearly where we stand.
Yes, of course, Shalini. Typical BBC.
Philosophically, ideologically, on a number of things, and this is what we're going to fight for. So no, I see no inconsistency with that whatsoever. It's very different, isn't it, to promising you'll reduce net migration to tens of thousands a year in consecutive manifestos, and then they're not even trying.
Oh, they haven't tried. Yeah, they haven't tried.
Chris Hope.
Chris Hope.
Chris Hope, GB News.
GB News.
Questions. You're here targeting Labour, you're here in Merthyr Tydfil, but why are your such policies aimed at the Tory voters?
Speak up, Chris.
Describe for us a typical reform voter. And to Richard Tice, on page 23, it says that you're bringing up tax to 40% of GDP more than Labour. Why is that? Or is that wrong?
Well, hold a second. I mean, you talk about reform voters.
Even Chris,
reform
even
members.
GB News are
a very large number
pushing
of
back
reform
a
members
bit.
are former members of the Labour Party, and they've been on that journey that millions did in this country. You know, from sort of 2010 on to now. I guess Lee Anderson being perhaps a very, very good example of that. And I think actually what we're talking about here, in terms of giving those at the lowest end of the income scale, or those trapped on benefits, we're trying to find some answers, some solutions, and things we can campaign for to try and make lives absolutely the best they can
But
be.
will
for those
you
at the
make
bottom of the
lives
spectrum. Now,
better?
whether you
That
regard
is the question.
Chris, as being a Labour policy or a Tory policy, I don't know. We just take the view that it's a right policy, it's the correct policy. And I actually think, what's interesting is immigration, the subject's always considered to be a right-of-centre debate. Across Europe, increasingly,
and I don't understand that,
on
because
the left of politics
it is
talking
something
about as well. So
it is.
I don't think it's
The reason that parties on the left are talking about it
sensible
now is because
to
it is
pigeonhole
a
much of
real
what's in there
issue
as
affecting
being
real
Labour or
people all the way
Conservative,
across
but I do
Europe.
believe, as Richard
And
said,
it's as simple as
there's an
that.
awful lot of common
And
sense. And these are the things we're
The
going to
people are
campaign for,
gravitating
and I
towards the
think we're gonna
parties that talk
gain
about it. So the other parties are now changing their tune to try and
public
claw back
support.
some of those voters.
Just on your second
It's
point,
that
Chris,
simple.
yes. There's a simple expression here, which is that smart tax cuts that create growth pay for themselves over and over and over. And if we get higher
Agreed.
growth, then guess what? You get higher tax revenues. And the compounding effect of that over a 5 to 10 to 15-year period is absolutely massive.
The guys running
And
the
there's not
sound are
enough
pretty bad.
discussion in this country about the benefits of growth. And there's no idea from the main two parties about that. So what we put in there is an estimate. If you grow the economy by an extra 1 to 1.5%, then the extra revenues, tax revenues, would be about 10 billion. Look, that's the reality. We've got to talk about growth and the benefits. Who's next? Sam Coates.
Sam Coates. That's Sky? I could be wrong. Yeah, Sky.
Mr Farage, in your contract, you're proposing to spend an extra £141 billion every year. That's about
Cut net zero.
that Labour are going to spend. So they're going to spend 10 times the amount the Tories, 3 times the amount that Liz Truss promised to spend.
Yeah, they are
You
the
did
dude.
say that you weren't going to win the next election, but the scale of this, it's deeply
Well,
unserious.
finally, they sorted the sound.
That's right, it's radical. It's fresh thinking. It's outside the box. It's not what you're going to get for the current Labour and Conservative parties, who are virtually indistinguishable, frankly, from each other.
They are.
Is this radical fresh thinking?
But they have been for
Yes.
years and years and
Is it
years. On
radical
all
fresh
of the big
thinking?
issues, they vote together. That's why we
Yes.
call them the
Is it
Uniparty.
very
The
radical
Football
change
Party.
on the way our education system is currently bringing up our young children. Yes, Britain is broken. Britain needs reform. That's what we're here for.
Who
That's
is
what we're
winning,
trying to
asked
do.
Adam?
And
Well, I'm not
Richard's
sure
also
we are.
suggested some
Put it
very
that way.
interesting
I'm not sure
radical
we're winning.
changes to pay for it. But we're unashamedly radical. We want change. This isn't working, and nobody has got political arguments in this election to. I mean, it's basically more of the same.
Of
It
course.
is going to be a Labour government. We all know that. I said that 2 weeks ago when I came back when Richard passed me the ball or hand grenade that was fizzing or whatever.
Well, you mean when you took power back from
you know,
Richard
and I
Tice?
said that 2 weeks ago, that Labour are going to win. This is about who the opposition's going to be. And what we're talking about is what we're going to fight
hi
for
there, Adam.
over the course of the next
It's
5
me,
years.
Kermit the Frog.
No, there's no rowing back from me.
Frog.
No apologies from me on this whatsoever. This would represent a fundamental transformational change within the British economy.
But to be clear for those who are watching on the live stream, Sam, yes, there's some series of spendings, costs, but we also outline all of the savings that I've just touched on there. So it's very important.
The biggest
that you look
one
at
clearly
both
being
sides
net zero.
of the
However,
coin. As Nigel says,
once again,
it's not
you give all
working.
these lovely
People are
figures,
getting
it's going to
poorer.
save
Unless we
£1,200 a
change
couple,
course,
but
we
is
are
it
heading
going in
towards
our pocket?
disaster.
By the
That's the
sounds of things,
Who's
no.
next?
No, it's not.
Hi, Emilio from Politico. I've got a question.
Emilio
for Mr.
from
Farage.
Politico.
One of the main criticisms of you is that it's all well and good being a kind of protest voice, because it's not that hard, but governance and even leading the opposition, like you're saying you want to do, is actually a much more complex thing. It requires delicate management, it requires negotiation and compromise.
They're basically
You might not like
accusing
their
Farage
decisions,
of being a campaigner and not a politician
They
here.
both have experience running enormous,
And they could have a
complex
point.
organisations that require some of that compromise.
I'm not saying they
and
don't.
negotiation.
I'm not saying they do.
What do you say to people who might like you and think that you talk a lot of sense, but don't believe that you've got the attitude or the skill for the compromise and management required to be an actual opposition leader or even PM rather than just a protester?
All right, well, look, I think...
Oh, good old Beaker.
You know, we all have our personalities. Yes, of course, I'm fairly decisive. I have an opinion. Doesn't mean I don't listen. Doesn't mean I don't change my mind. Doesn't mean I don't respect others. Doesn't mean I can't work as part of a team. And many people I work with in politics, I've worked with for many, many years. So I understand the point about compromise. But equally, you know, you have to have a vision. You have to have a goal.
The reason I side is because if they were to be able to be in a position where they were opposition or even in power, will he do more compromise?
All right, and I did it not because I wanted
Political
a career,
speak.
far
And
from
if you
it.
agree
In
with
fact,
my
in the end, I
concerns,
gave
hit
up
the
a
like
good
button,
career
subscribe to the
because I
channel if you
wanted to
haven't already,
pursue
and of
goals.
course,
I wanted to pursue
share button.
things
Click that share
that I
button.
believed in, and I've come out of retirement to do this for a similar reason, albeit
Was he ever in
it's not, as some
retirement?
would see it, the
Really?
narrower
Was he?
point of self-government outside the European Union, although I never believed it was, but some saw it that way. This is about the way in which the country is run, the way in which the country is managed. So yes, I can compromise if I need to. But I also think I've had some long-term views of politics, of society that have been right. So yes, I'm very confident. I'm very confident in what I say and what I believe.
I
in. And
agree,
think to give
Shalini. I don't
leadership,
think he
you
ever
actually
was in
need to
retirement.
have that.
I'll take a couple more.
He
Yes,
just
lady
used
there.
this Farage show on GB News as a vehicle, which is fine, by the way.
Hi, Catherine Jones from S4C. You're here today in one of the world's
S4C.
most deprived areas. Are you giving people here hope at this election, or is it just a list of things to hate, from immigration to devolution?
Oh my God.
That question is very closely linked to the previous question in this sense.
It's
This is
also
not
such a
protest
loaded,
document.
such a loaded
This
question.
is not a protest vote. And it's been a common misconception with all the campaigns that I've run over the years. I remember sort of in 2011, 12, 13, you know, every by-election we'd hear, well, that was a shock result for UKIP. The protest vote is growing. It was always a protest vote, as people are suggesting this is a protest vote. When you actually poll people that voted for parties I led back then or now, when you poll them and ask them, is it a protest vote? They say, no, it's not a protest vote. We believe
Are they,
in what
are
they're
they trying to say
saying.
that
We
Brexit
think they've got
itself was a
positive
protest vote?
policy solutions
Probably.
for the future. So yes, of course, we're in an area that has done relatively badly compared to many others, and we genuinely believe the biggest beneficiaries of the ideas we're outlining here will be people, and I repeat the point, trapped on benefits who don't want to be there, or on low incomes, or with energy bills that they're struggling to pay.
Struggling? Let me be completely candid with you. I owe thousands of my energy bills. I can't afford them. I can't keep up with them.
Than there is for anybody else.
You know, anything that can lift us out, I don't want them to lift me out. I'm trying to lift myself out.
Thank you, Gabrielle
But
Warren from
anything that
Sky
helps
News.
me on that journey is
You say you want to
greatly
find
appreciated.
£50 billion
And Labour
for
aren't going to
public
help me on that
sector waste
journey.
every year. That's an enormous
They're not.
figure. Where exactly
do you plan to find those savings? And is this just code?
Did he not just outline that?
Well, cuts to public sector. I mean, frankly, they're never in the office anyway, are they? I mean, it's work from home. Pop into Whitehall a couple of days a week. No, I mean, Richard's made the point at length, eloquently earlier. If you're running a company and things are tight, you say to your managers and middle managers, right, I'm sorry, this is the way it is. You've got to cut £5 and 100. In fact, in tough times, it might be £10.
And the middle managers are who need to go.
And you have to find a way of doing that without affecting the product that we're selling to the public. This is not unrealistic in any way at all. And the sheer bloating, the bloating of the quangos, the bloating of the civil service that has taken place even since, well, let alone since 2016, since 2019, is just astonishing. And that's what we've had with the Conservative government. We've had big government, we've had restriction of individual choices, we've had high taxation, record immigration, and all we're going to get with Labour is more of the same.
Agreed.
So, yeah, some of these things we're proposing are tough, but look, the accumulated national debt is now 2.7 trillion. It was just under 1 trillion when the Tories came to power. We simply cannot go on like this. We're skint. I mean, who else would dare say that in this campaign?
Well, this is, once again, the reason why people are fluctuating and moving towards Nigel Farage and Reform UK.
Never acknowledges
not so much Richard Tice, because he's a dullard,
expected to be in deficit next year by yet another £100 billion. So we're saying, let's face reality. We have to have a slimmed-down public sector, and we have to do that whilst maintaining services.
I agree.
Last question, ITV. And then we've got some one-on-ones, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Come on, ITV.
ITV News. You're proposing in this contract tax cuts, £88 billion worth, on a scale that might even cause Liz Truss to raise her eyebrows.
Liz Truss did nothing wrong. I will continue to... no,
this exactly the sort of
Liz Truss didn't go far enough. She should have cut back. She should have cut back.
No, I don't think it is. And to compare it to Liz Truss is wrong. Yes, Liz Truss wanted to talk about growth, but nowhere in her proposal could we see cuts on the one hand to compensate for the giveaways on tax. That was the fundamental mistake that Kwasi Kwarteng made with that budget. We're not making that. And sure, you can question our numbers, but actually, I think, in particular, what Richard has brilliantly illustrated, with the interest being paid to the banks not being my favourite set of organisations.
Yeah, screw the bank.
And this is something that is now picking up more and more economic approval, former deputy governors of the Bank of England and others saying Richard's on the right track with this. So no, and in terms of financial markets, well, of course, the French bond market is very interesting this morning if you look at it. Look, I think an idea that says we want to regenerate the British economy, an idea that says we want to bring back manufacturing to our economy, an idea that says we have to accept the fact, whatever our view,
do you know what?
We'll be using oil and gas until 2050, so why not produce our own in this
The vast
country
majority
rather
of
than
people in this
importing it?
country are
I think all
working
of these
class,
things actually will be
and
quite
they're the
bullish
ones that are going to
on
listen
financial
to this.
markets, even if there was
I'm
initially
working class
a
and
bit
as
of a
working
political
class
shock.
as
But
they
look,
come.
Let's be realistic. I repeat the point. We ain't going to win this election. This is our first big election. But we are well on our way, if you believe the MRP polls, etc. at the weekend, we're well on our way to establishing, that bridgehead in the House of Commons. And those MPs that we do elect will actually have on their shoulders the hopes and optimism of many, 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 many millions of people. Be in no doubt, this campaign
Never watched
is going well.
S4C,
There
can't
is
understand a
momentum out.
word,
You only have to
says
look
Julie, who
at
is
things
Welsh.
like social media numbers to realise how well we're doing with a budget that's a fraction of the others. And that's because we've got, we may be, compared to Labour and Conservative right now, we may well be a relatively small party, but we've got a very, very big message.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody. We're going to do some one-on-ones, and appreciate you all coming. We're going to, first of all, we're going to sign the contract. We'd like some candidates to come
sign it.
us.
They're going to sign it.
Us.
Well, we'll just sign one of them, sure.
We'll just sign one of them. Yeah.
We'll just sign one of them. Oh, caught all the hot mic there. We'll just sign one of them, shall we? Yes. Oh, dearie me. So that was the contract, not manifesto. That's definitely a manifesto launch for Reform UK there. And once again, a lot of the policies within will really, really resonate with normal people. And Labour and the Conservatives should be worried. They should be worried. I do think it didn't go far enough. I think that still they don't have the balls, and sorry about my camera messing up a little bit here, it's very hot. But still, they don't have the balls to tell the truth when it comes to the cost of living crisis and the cause of it. They need to do that. They need to tell the truth. And this is why I still do not feel that there is a party in this country that represents me. It's as simple as that. Because I champion small government, low taxes, freedom of choice, freedom of opportunity, equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. And even as somebody on the lower income echelons of society, I absolutely celebrate people who go out there and make a success of themselves. I think entrepreneurs are great. I think we need more of them. I think we need more competition, because the more competition that fosters in any sector, the more productivity there is. And who wins? You. Because higher quality, lower cost. Higher quality, lower cost. So it's as simple as that. I think Labour are definitely going to win this, as Nigel Farage himself said. I unfortunately don't think, because of the first past the post system, Reform are going to return that many MPs, or at least send that many MPs to the House of Commons. And that's not a knock against them, because they could get millions of votes. They could get millions more votes than the Conservatives. But the first past the post system is a problem. So what do you guys think? You know, there's over 90 of you watching on Twitter. There's a bunch of you watching here on YouTube. What do you think? Do you think that they are leaning in the right direction? Do they have your vote? Do you think that that and the other things that they have announced over the past few weeks have swayed you to move your vote from perhaps a Labour vote or a Conservative vote or even a Liberal Democrat vote over to a Reform vote? I would be interested to know. And on that note, I will say, on a personal note, I had a shower right before this show, and it's so hot out here, I'm about to go for another one. But if you've enjoyed this, then please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and of course you can support us further by becoming a patron at patreon.com/chasing-descent, Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/chasing-descent, or of course right here, become a channel member from just 99p a month. You can also gift channel memberships to other people. And I'm sure we will see you again very, very soon. I'm going to play the intro video again, just because I don't have anything else to play you on the way out. But don't forget, boys and girls, it's been good for me, but it's been great for you.
Welcome to the chase, where the sense of thrill, bit of genre here and think time stand still. Diving deep where others just pretend. They get guides on this journey, chasing descent. Chasing descent, break through the quest. Better than sure won't give it a rest. In a maze of facts, they find a way, bringing the dawn of a clearer day. They laugh, they grow, they take no signs. with Chase it, diss it.